Welcome back to the You Not Me podcast with Chris Behrmann. We hope that you guys have had a happy Thanksgiving and that it's been a restful time for you with friends and family. In this episode, we wanted to reflect on this idea of gratitude. Think around Thanksgiving and especially around the holidays, people always want to talk about gratitude and thankfulness, and gratitude is kind of one of those like buzzword things at the moment that everyone wants to talk about. But I think that a lot of gratitude practices really end up falling flat and kind of missing the mark in terms of what they're actually supposed to do. At the end of the day, a lot of people talk about it. A lot of people maybe take a moment of meditation or try and pursue some kind of peace. But at the end of the day, few people really possess the essence of gratitude, which is contentment. In today's episode, we're going to show you why you first have to get down to what you actually deserve in life and to really consider that before gratitude can start to bloom in your life. Chris, welcome in today.
Thanks, Jared.
So, one of the problems that we've briefly mentioned now with this idea of gratitude is that it's often seasonal, it's sentimental, and it's self-soothing. I think that people often look at it as maybe not necessarily a last-ditch resort, but kind of one of those things where they're like, oh, if I just decided to feel more grateful, then my life would be better, my day would be better. People are just kind of looking for this moment of peace and tranquility rather than actual true transformation. So if we're going to start by just looking at some of the problems with gratitude and just common gratitude practices, what are some of the things that we first need to address if we really want to start growing in gratitude?
Yeah, I think, it's so often that when, it's often said that we are grateful for our health when we lose it instead of when we have it. And so there are a lot of times that there are things happening in our life or that we have already that we're just not grateful for because we don't take time to step back and think about what we do have. And to your point, I mean, what do we actually deserve? What do we actually earned? I mean, it's amazing if you think about, your heartbeat, right? Anywhere from 50 to like 60, 70 beats per minute. And the last few minutes of you going through the intro, my heart beat probably 400 times, if not more. I had nothing to do with that. And am I grateful for my heart working well? I mean, I have countless friends and family that are going through cancer right now. They're going through trials. I mean, again, my youngest son and my oldest son went through many trials, health wise and friendships, etc. Passing of friends, and we're we're reminded to step back and look at the big picture and what really matters when things come crashing down. And so to your point, like how often can we really step back and take time to think about, when they say practicing gratitude, it's the hope is that people step back and they think about what do I have that I'm not even really paying attention to, that is just an amazing blessing that I don't even deserve or that I had nothing to do with. It was grace that was given to me. Um, and so I think the biggest problem is too often we're just so head down, so busy, and we're so in the thick of things. We have too many things going on. And we're in such a hurry. We don't take time to think. It's back to that, Earl Nightingale, when he said, people simply don't think. That's one of the biggest problems. And we simply don't take time to sit down and reflect on what we've been given and how amazing our life is. And can we find contentment even in the small little things? Because if you can't, then how do you really think you can find contentment in the large things? Because it's going to come and go and it's be very fleeting.
Yeah, and I think that the core question that all of this really hinges on is, do you see your life as a gift or as something that you deserve? I think that it's very easy to look around and, take stock of materials that we have and, jobs and family and health, as you mentioned, homes, things like this, and just kind of shrug your shoulders as if like, well, yeah, it's a, basic human essential. I deserve that. But the reality is that most of the world doesn't have all of those things. Most of the world are missing a number of those things at once, actually. And I think that the key is really to understand that you can't be thankful for something that you think you're owed. Like you're never going to be thankful for something you think you deserve. You're never going to appreciate what you think others owe you. Nothing will ever feel like a gift if you receive it as a payment. And so gratitude is really going to reach its cap whenever entitlement and expectation are really clouding your perspective. So maybe touch on just ways that people could practically start to explore that question a bit more in terms of maybe taking inventory of, what parts of their life they see as something they deserve, or how they might be able to start seeing things as a gift more.
Yeah, I think again, it is sad, but oftentimes we have to lose things before we really take things truly into the appreciation of what they are. I mean, you mentioned even a car. I mean, every time you go down and start your car and get in and drive away, you aren't like, oh my God, I'm so thankful my car started today. Because you just take it for granted. It's a new car or you've had it, just for a short time or whatever. But if your car's been having issues and you go down and every time you turn the key, you're hoping that that thing's going to start. Every time it does, you're like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad it started today. But in our lives, do we wake up and say, I mean, there are people often I say, how are you doing? And they say, I'm great, I'm above ground, or, I woke up today. And the thing is again, back to what is our breath, our heartbeat, and just waking up. You don't wake yourself up in the morning. Um, God's grace allows you to wake up. And the question is, what are you going to do with that day? And I think too often, um, people forget that the trials and sufferings and loss are not always bad, because if it helps us step back and remember how how amazing it is to have some of these things. I mean, whether it's me financially losing everything in the real estate market, but then realizing all that really mattered was that I had my faith, my relationship, my family, my friends. I mean, I could work, I could find a job. My oldest son, with all his injuries, I mean, he holds soccer so loosely now, and he's just grateful to play. He's just grateful to be healthy. And um, before all of those injuries, he took it for granted. And again, we all do. I mean, if you ever had your lower back go out, you took for granted being able to put socks on in the morning. It's unbelievable when that goes out. So I think again, it just goes back to just stepping back and remembering that all these things that have happened in our lives are not always something that we've done. To your point, when you work and you get your paycheck, it's not like, I mean, yeah, you're grateful for the paycheck to come. And some companies expect you to be grateful just to have a job, but you also worked to get that paycheck. But um, one of the questions I ask when I do work with the CMPD, Charlotte Mecklenburg Police Department, is I ask people what is, who are one or two people in your life that if it wasn't for them, you wouldn't be who you are today. And the whole point of that is for them to sit down and think about, like, who has been really influential in my life to come alongside me to help me see how valuable I am, how loved I am, and the gifts that I have that maybe I don't see, or maybe the world tells me I don't have. But those people were there for you. And so the hope is that maybe you have one or two people like that. And again, back to, if you don't, we want to be someone that stands in the gap for you. But also it's just taking that time to slow down and remember who has been put into your life along the way. Hopefully your parents, right? Hopefully your mom that birthed you, and your dad hopefully loved you as well. And those are the first two people that ever showed you unconditional love. And if they haven't, then obviously, again, that's going to be something you struggle with. You're going to be striving and working to try to prove yourself. And then you fall into that problem of, well, you think you've earned everything because you've had to work and do just to basically show that you're valuable. And then pride creeps in. And then, to your point, you get a clouded sense of gratitude because you feel like, I pulled myself up by my bootstraps. I earned it all. I did this. Instead of remembering, like I said, I didn't wake up. I didn't wake myself up this morning. It's by God's grace that I woke up. But also, his love for me and then the people he's put in my life have helped shape who I am today.
Yeah, and you've mentioned entitlement and pride and people thinking, well, it was me who worked for this. I earned it. I deserve it because I put in the work. I spent long hours studying for my degree, or I worked overtime at my job for 20 years or whatever to get that promotion, or I trained extra after every single practice for my whole life. Therefore, I deserve this. I know for myself as a player, when I was a young player, going into college, that was how I thought. I thought, I've put in more time than anyone else that I know. Therefore, like, I deserve to be a top player. Like, but that's not how life works. Entitlement and pride are really dangerous things. They, are very persuasive and can convince you quite quickly that you're much better than you actually are. And the consequence, obviously, is that even when you do get good things, entitlement shrinks your appreciation. Pride will often kill your perspective. You have a very self-centered view of the world, and lots of things, even achievements, become mundane. It's really only like when you lose or when something doesn't go your way that you really feel anything. So you miss all of the beautiful, joyful emotions that come with achieving something special, and then you only really get the downside and the negative. Something you've mentioned a lot so far is just the grace that we have from God in waking up each day, having our health. These are all things that He holds in His hand. And one of the texts that I really wanted to touch on today was 1 Corinthians 15:10. It reads, "But by the grace of God I am what I am, and His grace toward me was not in vain. On the contrary, I worked harder than any of them, though it was not I, but the grace of God that is with me." So Paul is defending his apostleship, basically the legitimacy of his ministry to the Corinthian church. And he's saying that he worked harder than anyone, but yet it was the grace of God that was with him. So Chris, if you could kind of dig into this verse a little bit and just how we can apply some of the principles that Paul brings up in this text to his own ministry and to our own lives, and how that might transform our mindset and help us to shift more towards a you, not me mindset.
I think it's funny, the word work, when it pops in out of someone's mouth or in their head, often they think work is a bad thing. And work is actually, we were built to work. I mean, we're made to work. We're made to do things, we are made to just sit and be on the beach and that's it. Like we're called to live in community. We're called to love and serve other people. Again, the you not me mindset is all about putting other people above yourself. And if you're just in a consumer type mindset, well, then you're not going to have any gratitude because you're just trying to look around. What can I take from who, and how can I outdo someone so I can get something more? But instead, the you not me mindset really it's talks about going the second mile, going the extra mile, trying to do more, not because it's out of duty or you have to or it's to get more. It's because you want to do something with excellence because you're so grateful for the life you've been given that, again, the hope is with the you not me mindset. You look at work and the people you work with and people you work for and the customers you serve and the company you work for, that it's a blessing to be there. Not again, I mean, most companies, the problem is most companies like drill in, you should just be thankful you have a job. And actually what they should also be saying is we're just thankful that you're here because you're a part of this company and that's why we hired you. Is we see you as unbelievably gifted, special, and a part of this community and family. And we want to do something great together and work for a purpose greater than ourselves. And the thing is when we go to work, can we work with excellence? Can we do things in a way that is not just half-hearted, but instead, can we strive and with all that we have, like Paul said, can I strive to do something with excellence, not so that I make much of myself, but so I can serve somebody in a way that makes them know how valued they are, or makes my team know how much I care about them because I'm doing everything I can to work to help them be as successful as they can for a customer, for our company, et cetera. And, I just forwarded you some stuff about Eric Little and when, which is, Chariots of Fire was written about. And it's such an amazing, interesting story because it's the dichotomy of Harold Abramson and Eric Little. And, Eric Little, he said, when I run, I feel God's glory and I am doing it to his glory. And it's a grace, the ability to be able to run. And he's like, God made me fast. And so he wanted to run fast. He wanted to do it to the best of his ability. And then you have on the other side, Harold Abramson, who said, I have 10 seconds to prove who I am to the world and to prove to myself that I'm worthwhile. Because if I don't run a certain time or win and get a medal, I'm not worth anything. And that's, I think, the biggest problem with the world today is too often, I mean, the workplace and sadly in our homes, to our spouses, to our kids, is we're saying, unless you do blank, I'm not going to love you and you don't matter. When really it should be, I love you regardless of what you do. And then that empowers you to have a heart to want to do your best, to want to give your all. And then you do amazing things. So it's like, can we reverse that instead of saying, if you win, all right, then I'll give you more money or I'll love you or I'll whatever it is. But if we can really change that to help people see that the way you were created was perfect and beautiful and you're valued and you're lovely um and that just we're just thankful for you. That's what empowers someone's heart to want to do something amazing.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that it all really hinges on this. I think at the individual level, it all hinges on this posture of humility where, like Paul recognized that even his own effort, his own hard work, which most of the world is going to claim, that comes from within me, and I'm a really hard worker and industrious and this and, whatever. But Paul says it wasn't even him. He's like, that was God's grace. I worked hard, sure, but I worked hard because God gave me the grace to do that. And I think that whether we're leading other people, if people are complimentary of us, if we achieve something, even if we're just like saying, hey, I gave it my absolute best today. And God, thank you for giving me the grace to do that. Because in my flesh, I probably wanted to throw in the towel like 10 different times. If I was patient with my spouse, if I was able to teach something of worth to my kid, or if I was able to encourage one of my teammates today, God, thank you for giving me the grace to do that by your spirit. And I think that that's one of the biggest ways I think that you've hit on here, just to fight against pride and entitlement, is just to remember that like nothing good that I produce is just because of me. I might have done it, but God was the one who enabled me to do that and who gifted me to do that. And I think that when you look at what just the standard person expects for their life in the Western world, when I was a kid, I always thought, well, I'm just gonna keep getting better and better at soccer, and then eventually, I'm gonna be playing in some of the best leagues in the world or in the country or whatever. And you just kind of expect this like continual, you know, progression, one success after another, you know, not necessarily comfort and ease in everything, but that like, okay, you have a hard time. Well, it's automatically going to lead to something, way, way better. And you're going to have more success because of that. And I think that the natural response, at least for myself, especially, and I'm sure a lot of people can relate, is that, those expectations often go unmet. And then it's like frustration, resentment. You're looking at where other people are at and you're like, man, why am I not there? Like I worked hard. So this whole thing about humility and just seeing how great God's grace is towards us is really um, keeps you from having your gratitude completely suffocated. And I think that what you're hitting on is absolutely key there.
Yeah, I think, it's interesting just this past weekend, with both my boys, playing in the Sweet 16 and NCAA tournament. Um, they lost. And it was a team they beat earlier in the season, but it was a really good team. And I know we've talked about this previously, where it's like when you look at competition, is it someone to beat or is it someone to measure yourself and to just basically try to sharpen yourself to grow and get better? And um, and too often people look at, especially when people have a me not you mindset and they're on a team, they're just playing to win and or to make themselves better so they can go on to the next thing. And what was amazing is, as heartbreaking as it was for that team to lose, and knowing that I think they're 8 or 10 seniors, it was their last college game ever. Um, it was so sad for that. But then we went out to dinner that night, parents and players, and I mean those guys were having a blast together. I mean, sure, they would have rather won, but the thing is okay. So if you win, you play 4 more games, and if you win a national championship, and then you have a trophy, then you have a ring, and then guess what? It's still over. Whether you lose today or you lose in 4 days, it's still over. But what happened along the way those relationships that were built. And you could see that those guys were sitting down after that game, having just lost a few hours prior, that, yeah, they were sad to have lost, but man, the relationships that they built over those 4 years, and, obviously some of them shorter in period of time, but those seniors, but also all the rest of the people, the culture they created, like what a brotherhood and a family that is. I mean, that's special. Like that's, people aren't sitting there just complaining about other people's play and this person did this or that or whatever. They were just grateful that they had the opportunity to play and to have the best season that they've ever had as a program, and the relationships along the way. And that's the mindset of not just you, not me, but also it's the mindset we have to walk through life, to realize that contentment doesn't come when I achieve something, because guess what? There's always another thing to achieve. And the contentment comes in the fact that I'm thankful that God gave me the grace and ability to do it. I'm grateful for the people around me that I got a chance to do it with, and the relationships that I built. And I'm grateful for how I've grown and bettered myself, and been bettered because the people around me that have sharpened me, and the team, the parents, the coaches that have built into me, that I'm now prepared even better for the next thing that I have. And oh, by the way, I still have these relationships that carry on to the end. And that's what I think is really, really special. I mean, you have it, I've had it with guys I played with in college, and just the friendships that are built along the way, and the shared experiences, whether on a sports team or at a job, going through trials, even like, I mean, there's trauma bonding. Like there are hard times that people go through that they bond deeply over trauma and hard times, that it's an inseparable bond. And so, again, can you be grateful for the ability to just have those relationships? And can you be grateful for the people around you, and that have been a part of you growing along the way, and have the humility to recognize that you are who you are because of the people in the past and the people that have loved you on the way. And ultimately, first and foremost, that's, I mean, just by the grace of your life, from the Lord.
Absolutely. And I think that the mindset shift really in all of this is to adopt the apostles' attitude. So look at the apostle Paul and how he viewed his life. He speaks in another epistle about how he had everything according to the world standards before he was called as an apostle. And then on the other side of that, he considered all of that stuff as worthless. The word he uses is literally poop. Like I could care less about any of that. And he sees all of his life as unmerited, undeserved grace from God. And you mentioned earlier, seeing your health, the relationships that you have in your life, the opportunities that are before you every day, whether it be with investing into the people around you, whether it be things on the table at work or at school or practice or whatever it might be. These things, seeing all of these things as a gift is really what will transform a lot of your life and turn gratitude from a technique or a practice that you do occasionally to something that's a way of living. So when you adopt this kind of mindset shift, Chris, what are some things that might happen for listeners who are out there and are considering doing this?
I think some of the big things that happen is, what we easily fall to is comparison, right? That's one of the first things we do is we measure ourselves around other people, whether it's work, home, wherever it is. Instead of comparison, you turn to contentment, and you're grateful for where you are, and you know that what you have is a blessing. In that, um, instead of saying, "I wish I had this," which again leads, to being discontent. You step back and say, I have what I need. And I'm so thankful for being given what I need. Too often, obviously, our needs get confused with our wants, and then our joy, declines because we don't have what we want. But if we really realize what we need, it was even interesting. We were driving back from the game, and unfortunately, we passed a gentleman that was pushing a shopping cart full of stuff, and he's homeless. And I mean, it puts it all in perspective. I mean, a lot of us have way more than we need, and we're still unhappy. Um, one of the other things is entitlement turns to humility. Instead of being entitled for I deserve this and everything else, is you look at life through the lens of humility, to say, I really don't deserve this, and I'm so grateful that I have it, and I'm going to use it to the best of my ability. Whatever those gifts are, whatever those things that you've been given. How can I be generous with what I have? Another one is instead of just being restless and always thinking we need to do more and what do I need to do next to get more, instead we just rest. We just have a peace in the way that we live and the way that we see people. We don't look at people with dollar signs over their head like what can we get? Instead we look at people and instead of trying to impress them or try to get something from them, we rest and we think about them first. We actually how do I make that person feel valued, cared for, and loved? And what a gift that is to when you see someone that has that kind of rest where they don't need to prove themselves to anybody. They just really want to care about you and hear about you instead of just tell you how great that they are. And then finally, instead of having pride, it turns to praise. And instead of being prideful about what I've earned, what I've done, and it's just back to thank you, Lord, for what you've given me. Thank you, to your boss that's given you a job that you get a chance to work with him or her and the people around you, and praise for the job that you have, that hopefully you're doing something that is a purpose and something greater than yourself, that you're helping your customers achieve great things. And so those are I think some of the quick things that really look at someone that is filled with gratitude.
All right, Chris. Well, if we're going to get into some of the practical takeaways as we start to steer the ship towards the harbor now, if we're going to start just with identifying expectations, what are maybe a couple of practical things? Obviously, we talked about how expectations can be a bit dangerous when you're putting all of your hope into what you think you might get or what you desire. What are maybe a couple things that people can look at when it comes to expectations if they're looking to grow in gratitude?
I think I mean, again, for me and obviously for you, I mean, it goes back to trusting the Lord's sovereign hand and what comes. And I mean, I mean, even back to um, whether it's my losing everything in real estate, my oldest son with all his four injuries, um, had things gone the way that we thought they would, maybe I would have so much money I'd be retired right now. Well, but guess what? I wouldn't be the person that I am today had I not gone through that loss to see what really mattered most. You and I wouldn't be doing this podcast. And I maybe wouldn't have the relationships that I have with my wife and my kids and friends, because pride would have crept in. And so I think the biggest thing is really stepping back and understanding that sometimes when there's the old saying, sometimes when it looks like things are falling all into pieces, they're actually falling into place. And there are times, many times, that things that I thought should have gone a certain way didn't, and it actually, if I was patient, turned out way better than I would ever expected. And I mean, my two boys being at the same college together, playing together I mean, it's beyond unbelievable to see the Lord's sovereign hand and how that worked out, but also how great of a time they're having and building those shared experiences. And so can you step back and when things seem like they're falling apart, can you trust and have hope in something greater than your circumstances? Can you step back and say that maybe what I think is best isn't the right thing, but maybe what can I do now? And I need to do the next best thing. If things are going off the rails, if I think that, then what's the next best thing I can do to, back to we talk about riding the wave, right? I mean, when a big wave comes, best thing is to have a surfboard and ride the wave versus getting pummeled by the wave. And so it's saying, well, what can I do now that things have gone a different direction? How can I look at that from a different perspective, but also with trust and belief that good will come out of it, and I'll learn and I'll grow and it'll be used for something in the future.
Yeah, that's great advice. And I think that one of the things you mentioned earlier as well that I would love to hear just some practical feedback on is you mentioned kind of taking stock of the things that people take for granted, all the small things that we just assume that we deserve until, they're taken away. What are a couple practical points that listeners can take away in terms of those things today?
I think one of the things that we need to do is just step back and notice what we're overlooking. Too often, again, I mean, there are so many things that my wife does for me that I don't say thank you enough. And are there things that maybe are the mundane, the little things that she does? Can I just let her know how grateful I am for what she does and how well she loves me? Same with friends, same with coworkers. I mean, you do all that and many things. So maybe just choose three small things today, and whether it's writing in a journal or just thinking about it, and can you be grateful for it, and can you basically take the time to build some attention towards what is around you and opening your eyes and seeing what matters, appreciate that, and have gratitude, but then also to realize that from that appreciation, that gratitude comes contentment. And because too often we forget how blessed we actually are and how many things we have, especially I mean, in the US. I mean, compared to other third world countries, I mean, what we have is amazing. And there are people that come from other places that are so grateful to be here, but yet, unfortunately, a lot of times we just pick and poke. And I mean, for example, I was reading a book the other day, and I saw um, a word that should have been, instead of you, which is what it was, it should have said your. And that is a 365-day devotional. And what was amazing is my eyes stuck to, and the first thing I thought of was like, there was a mistake, but yet I hadn't stepped back and say, man, this guy's done an amazing job with his editing and the writing. And, for 200 or actually, where are we now? Probably like 300 and something days this year. I found one little mistake, and that's, I focused on that. And instead of focusing on the one little thing that we're missing or that's wrong or somebody does or whatever, back to the, why point out the speck in someone else's eye when I have a plank sticking out of my own eye? So, I mean, can we look at the world and see the little small things that are amazing and beautiful, and let people know how grateful we are for what they do and who they are in our lives, and that's what's going to build appreciation, gratitude, and then just for us to have contentment. Is that, you know what, maybe some of the things that I think I want, I don't really need them, and are they really going to make me that much happier than I already am? Well, guess what, if I'm not very content with what I have, they're sure not going to last very long in how much they make me happy. So the true enduring joy and gratitude is one of contentment, where, I mean, we can enjoy a small cup of coffee just as much as some major thing that happens in our life, because we're content in all situations.
Yeah, thanks so much for that, Chris. And thanks as well for the conversation today. I know I'm definitely grateful to have the time with you. And we hope that this has been transformational for you as a listener. Just to close out, remind you that gratitude is not so much a practice, it's more of a perspective. And that when you start to see life as a gift and everything that you have as a gift, you'll be free to live with joy and humility. Thanks so much for the time today, Chris.
Thank you.